Ready. Ready. Ready.
Hello, welcome to Enlightning. I'm so excited to have my guest here, Christian Hernandez, who is the Developer Experience Lead at CodeFresh. Thank you so much for taking your time to come teach us about Argo today, Christian.
Thank you for having me. I'm so super excited. I was kind of jamming out to your intro there. It was I don't know what you were talking before. You said you had a little intro music, and I didn't know what to expect, and I was pleasantly surprised. It took me back to my youth, at least, from when I used to when I used to have time to play video games back when I was a kid. So it was a nice 8-bit intro there.
I'm so glad you asked about it because my brother wrote it. And he just gave it to me. So this is the first time I debuted it in its entirety. I just put the link to his website. So my little brother is not so little. He's in his 30s, but he's
my little big brother, right?
He's a professional musician. And I actually toured with him in a band in 2014 in his band Mutual Benefit. So I played keys and sang harmonies with my brother for that year.
Awesome.
Yeah. I see
like
you have
Partridge Family. What's that?
It's true. You know, when I was a kid, my parents would have me sing 3-part harmonies with them at church. Yeah. So I see you have guitars in the background of your.
Yes.
It seems like you're a musician too.
Yes, I have a mirror there, so it looks like I have more than I actually have.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Well, yeah. I only have 4, so it's. But I actually been playing for forever, right? I guess now, right? When I was a kid, when I was 14, I started playing. And to this day, I actually still play. A lot of people say, do you have them for decoration? I'm like, no, actually, I play every day.
Oh, nice.
So, but nothing cool. Actually, I'm a big metalhead, right? So I play heavy metal.
Nice.
So nothing cool. So nothing cool, but it's mostly for me. But it's really. I was actually also in bands when I was younger, but nothing too big. Which is why I switched to tech. So here I am.
We found our stages in the end,
Mhm.
right?
Exactly.
We have lots of hellos. Will you please tell me how to pronounce your name? You've been such an amazing person and supporter of the show, and you're so wonderful on Twitter, but I don't know how to say your name.
Likewise.
Salaboy, thank you for coming. Abhishek, wonderful. Hello from India. It's so nice of you to be here. Thank you so much. One thing I'm curious about, one thing I understand about your job position, like among a lot of things that you do, you help to plan conferences. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I am part of a handful of committees. So the first one being the Argo events committee, and so it's actually a SIG that we are bootstrapping currently in the Argo project, and one of the things that we're putting on is ArgoCon, right? And so I invite everyone to register at ArgoCon. ArgoCon, it's a hybrid, right? So if you can't make it out to the Bay Area in California, It'll be virtual as well, so it'll be a hybrid, but I'll be there in person. That's one of the committees I'm part of, to try to put on the CFP committee, the planning committee. It's a lot of meetings, and also and also I'm actually not only part of, but also co-chair of the events committee for GitOpsCon, right? So GitOpsCon is put on by the GitOps working group in the CNCF, and GitOpsCon is a co-located event in KubeCon. So we'll be in Detroit. It'll be like the day zero. What do they call it? Co-located? They used to call them day zero, but then like they started having multiple day zeros. So it's like, okay, well, it's co-located. It's like
so day -1.
Yeah, exactly. Take it at -2. No, let's just call it co-located. So GitOpsCon, I'm actually a program co-chair there for GitOpsCon. So I'm doing lots with GitOps, not only just in the Argo community, but just in the overarching community as well.
That's amazing. We're so fortunate to have you and your expertise with us right now. We have a couple comments. Oh, hello from India, but Abhishek said, so very excited for today's stream. So I love that.
So am I. I was preparing yesterday. I was like, oh man, I have so much to talk about. So
and Eddie also says, hi everyone. Hello,
hey, Eddie.
Welcome. I want to know, what does it take any special expertise to, like, if someone wanted to get involved planning a conference, how would you do that if you're interested? And if I want to know the insider point of view, if someone wants to get like a talk accepted to a conference, a piece of advice you'd have for that.
Oh, this is great. This is something that's always talked about. So in the open source community needs a lot of help, and not just tech help, right? So a lot of people just getting started, or they love tech, or they love open source, but maybe they don't feel they're technical enough. There is a great need for non-technical people. Trust me. It's essentially just start getting involved, right? So for example, for the Argo project, you go to the Argo project website, and there's a link to get involved, or you go to the GitHub page, and all those meetings are public meetings, right? You can they're public calendars. You click on the link, you join, you ask, hey, what do you need help on? You start making connections. It's really it's really basically knocking on the door until someone lets you in. That's basically been my experience. Same with the GitOps working group. You go to opengitops.dev, you click on get involved, you show up to a meeting and say, hey, I'm good at documentation. Like, do you guys need help with documentation? If you're non-technical,
yes.
It's always needed. Like, no matter, I think even big projects desperately need people that can document, right? And some people joined. I know people have joined the GitOps working group, and they're like, hey, I'm pretty good at being a webmaster. I'll take care of your website. And it's like, please, there's a lot of so like there's many points of entry, right? So really, how to get involved is really just get involved. Just start poking your head in, and just when you see up, when you see someone ask for help, be like, volunteer, ask, hey, can I be part of the programming committee? It's like, yeah, jump on. It's a public calendar sort of thing. So it's kind of really just knock on the door.
Right on.
And to your other question, and I see Hannah's on. Hi, Hannah.
Hi, Hannah.
So for getting a CFP accepted, it's a little bit more art than science. So I know, just from my personal experience, for me being on a CFP committees, is end user stories go to the top of the list, right? It's no one, including myself, wants to go to a conference and have a sales pitch. And and I'm sorry, right? Like, I work for a company, Whitney, you work for a company, everyone works for a company. We understand we need to make money. However, these are end user conferences, and if your CFP sounds like a sales pitch, it's just not going to get accepted. So it's really end user stories. So if you work for a vendor and you have a customer that you did something cool with, that automatically shoots to the top, right? It's like people want to know end user stories. And within the end user story realm, if you have something that broke or something went terribly wrong, people love that. We don't we always want to, like, and I understand, let's celebrate our successes. That's great, but like, let's talk about what went wrong. Like, people love people try to avoid talking about what went wrong.
Yeah, but that's
just as important. And that's just as important. It's like, oh, like, I've been to some talks. I go, well, I never thought that would go wrong, and went back and kind of changed what I was doing, because it's like, well, I see the ramifications. Postmortems are always great. Those always shoot up straight to the top as well. And so, yeah, that's kind of like my advice. It's like, have a good end user story. If you work for a vendor, like, start bugging your customers and saying, hey, let's get a talk submitted. That one cool thing that we did, let's submit that and let's talk about that. And so, and also,
and let's break stuff.
Let's break stuff. And then, like, let's talk about that one thing that we broke. That's another good CFP.
I want to acknowledge some comments from the chat. Eddie likes your mic, Christian, and he says, agrees. Open source is not just about code. I see you want to say something about your mic.
It was it's a nice mic, but it was a gift. I always say, like, for whatever reason, like, I don't spend that much on equipment. This was just a gift, but yes, I love this mic. It was a great mic.
Hannah's been so encouraging. I love the approach of whiteboarding to visualize the topics. And Eddie, it's Eddie's first time, so he's asking, how do I do my whiteboard stuff? This is a great transition. I'm going to start moving my laptop to behind the whiteboard, so you'll get a better view of what it looks like back there. But this is just a room in my house. This is, So I'm at, all you need, Eddie, is your own whiteboard studio.
This is just a room in my house too, so it's.
So I'm going to start moving to behind the whiteboard. Chat, I would love to hear from you. I would like to know who's using Argo CD and what your experience has been. And if you don't know Argo CD, I'd like to know what, like, your impressions are. Even if they're totally wrong, it's really interesting to know how Argo CD is being perceived in the community. And again, like you said before, like, being wrong is really interesting, and it's enjoyable, and we promise not to judge you. I promise not to judge you.
I won't either. All right, don't.
And then, Christian, I think this is a good opportunity for you to maybe talk about the book you're writing and about the certification program you're working on.
Yeah. So,
or you've written.
I've written a book.
Yes, it's done.
And I do have another one in the hopper, but I'll talk about the one that's out. So, when I was at Red Hat, I wrote a book called Path to GitOps, right? And so Path to GitOps is really a collection, I would say a collection of conversations that I've had. A lot of people has always, when I talk about GitOps, when I talk about Argo CD, they say, well, like, this sounds great. This sounds awesome. Like, how do I get started? Or, hey, I've been doing, I've been playing with Argo CD and, it sounds good. We're looking to adopt it. What are some of the things I need to look out for? What are some of the things I need to keep in mind? And so, Path to GitOps really is, it's like, okay, well, let's have this conversation of, like, what are the things that you need to look out for? So, the link is right there in the chat. So, if you go to developers.redhat.com, or if you just Google Path to GitOps, it should be like one of the first few things that pop up. At least for me, it does. Not that I searched myself.
I search my assets all the time.
What's the SEO? I do it in private mode, right? So I don't get my cookies. But anyway, Path to GitOps isn't meant to be comprehensive. It's meant to be like, okay, what are the things I need to look out for when I'm thinking about adopting GitOps? And so it's a general book. I'm deep in the Argo CD world. And with GitOps is kind of more of like a practice. So it's not necessarily focused on Argo CD. And so for those of you who are just getting started with Argo CD, or who are not necessarily only just getting started, but want to deepen your skills with Argo CD, CodeFresh has a free certification course, right? So if you go to codefresh.io/get-certified, it's in the chat. There is a certification course for Argo CD. So this takes you from zero to Argo CD. It really is for beginners. It's absolutely free.
I have a question.
Yeah. Yes.
Is there
question.
a lab element to it?
Yeah.
Like, what's
it's
the format?
It's hands-on.
Okay, that means everything. Yeah.
It's 100% hands-on. And actually, Hannah, who's on, actually helped co-write it. So shout out to her.
Yeah, Hannah.
She helped with writing it. It's a great course. I took it when I was at Red Hat. I thought it was fantastic. So go out, get certified. There's going to be different levels. The first level is getting started. And the next level is coming out at ArgoCon. So stay tuned with that. Sign up now. Sign up for ArgoCon. You'll get your chance to use the second to get certified in the second level. So hands-on. By the way, I am also a hands-on person. I hate Q. Yeah. I've been around this industry for a while. I've taken certifications where it's just questions and answers, and it's like you just like memorize the question at that point, and it's not really like hands-on. Like I don't really learn anything, and I really like the hands-on approach to this certification. Kind of like the Kubernetes certification or like the Red Hat certifications. Like you actually have to do the stuff. So it's that's another aspect if someone wants to not only learn more but actually get hands-on to the certification courses.
Excellent. I want to acknowledge lots of great chat right now. We have a couple of responses to our question about people's experience with Argo CD. Is it related to JSON and the Argonauts? I'm unfamiliar with that reference.
So it's so the Argonaut or the Argo was a ship that Jason used in I believe it was the Odyssey.
Okay.
Was it the Odyssey? Someone correct me. If it's not the Odyssey, please someone correct me in the chat. But it was one of those Greek mythology sort of things. Coming off it's playing off the Kubernetes, right? So Kubernetes is Greek, right? And so it's like, okay, well, what can we do, around the Greek, Greek, and it's like, all right, Greek mythology, we'll call the project Argo project. Because it took you on this quest, right? So like you're on the ship and it takes you on this quest and you're having fun with names.
Right on. So yes, the short answer is yes.
Short answer is yes.
And from Jay Walter, we have, I'm not using Argo CD yet, but we'll start using it soon as we're moving to OpenShift from a customized Docker Compose solution.
Awesome.
Nice.
Awesome.
That's great.
So you're speaking to me because former Red Hatter here. I used OpenShift a lot, so
nice.
good move.
I'm a former IBMer, so
there you go.
We have some endorsement for your CodeFresh certificate. It's awesome and well done. And then Fieldstone said, "My next guess is that Argo CD is related to an octopus." I always thought it was a squid in my mind.
It is. Yeah, it is a squid. So, but yeah, it's a squid.
Excellent.
So same family-ish. I don't know. I'm not a marine biologist or anything. So,
okay. And then we have comments about the Lightboard being amazing, but Eddie's a digital nomad, so it does make me feel a little tied down to Austin, Texas, where I live. And we have a quite involved technical question that I'm going to read, and maybe you can briefly answer, but I would prefer not to get too into it before we've even talked about what Argo CD is. But I want to, Lear77 says, is it good practice to sync Argo CD components with an Argo CD application?
Short answer is yes.
Short answer is yes.
Short answer is yes. Essentially what they're asking is, can you manage Argo with Argo? And the answer is yes, and it's usually good practice. So short answer.
Short answer. And
we might get deeper into it later.
Yeah, and if you want to ask that question again at the end, once everyone's on board with what that even question means, like I don't understand the question
Yeah,
yet,
exactly.
then please feel free to do that. Excellent. And then we have another. I haven't used Argo yet. I deployed to Kubernetes with GitHub Actions.
That is a fantastic. By the way, I love that you put that up. That is a fantastic comment because there is a difference between doing it. You know, they feel similar, but there's a huge difference in doing it with GitHub Actions or with doing it with Argo CD. And it's not either or, right? You're going to use both. So, great comment.
And so that gives me a clue that Argo CD has to do with deploying to Kubernetes.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is a clue. That is a clue.
And then Abhishek also says they're using Argo CD in their project. So, and then hello Napalm, good to see you. Thanks for coming. Excellent. So maybe before you tell me exactly what Argo CD is, you can tell me, okay, I'm new to tech. For those of you first timers to the show, I wrote my first line of code in January 2019. I started at IBM in November of 2019. And I don't have a lot of context for what problems existed in the landscape before these tools came along. So I love to start with what were people trying to do before your tool existed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I always think, how far back should I go? I was actually thinking about this yesterday. It's like, should I go, back in my day, I started being grumpy. we didn't have these fancy
work
yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah. I carried the server on my back. So let's start with Kubernetes, right? And so really to understand Argo CD is to, you need to be sort of familiar and kind of rooted in Kubernetes because it's a Kubernetes tool. So so in Kubernetes, there is the whole platform is built on declarations, right? So it's built on something called promise theory, right? Like I you give me something and my contract to you is I make it happen. So I think Kelsey Hightower did a great there was a good video on YouTube, the history of Kubernetes. You should totally watch it. It's especially if you're a geek, if you're a nerd like me, like I love watching stuff like that. I even watched, there's a history of Unix that was like from the 70s that is fantastic. But anyway,
nice.
It's built on something called promise theory, and Kelsey. I'll try to paraphrase what Kelsey Hightower compared it to, but think about the U.S. Postal Office, right? I want to, Whitney, I want to send you a letter, right?
Yeah.
I have a letter for you, and on the envelope, I write like your address, right? I write your name, I write your address, I write the city you're in, and then I put a stamp on it, and then I hand it over to the U.S. Postal Service. How it gets to you, it's not my concern, right? How trains could be it's kind of morbid, could be derailed, right? Cars break down, planes get delayed and rerouted, but that's not my problem. Every time something happens, the U.S. Postal Service doesn't call me. They just say, I promise to get this to Whitney, and you get it without even knowing, right? And that's kind of what Kubernetes is, right? You have a description of what you want running, and you hand it over to Kubernetes, and Kubernetes makes it happen. So, like you give Kubernetes a deployment description, and it'll try to run it, and it, abstract it from the end user. And so, so when people deploy something with Kubernetes, it's usually, even though it's in the declarative way, right? You're declaring something to Kubernetes. You're doing it imperatively, right? Like I say, hey, I want to deploy something to Kubernetes. I'm going to do, it's usually kubectl, right? So you do a kubectl, apply -f and the name of the YAML, the file, right? It's some sort of YAML. It could be JSON, but I think we've all standardized on YAML. But if you use JSON with Kubernetes, please drop it in the chat. I think I'm going to run a poll later on. I was like, is
Yeah.
someone using YAML? The jokester in me wants Kubernetes to support XML eventually. But anyway, for all you Java heads out there, and so you do kube apply something, some YAML file. So I stick to a deployment just because it's easiest. Everyone knows it, and it tries to run it. When you need to make an update to your application, right? So when you need to make an update your application, what you do is you build the container, and then you either update the YAML file by editing it in memory, or you do a kube apply that same file with the with the new, you change the file, you do to the new image, you do a kube apply to that file, and then Kubernetes does it. And so this is kind of to the to Eddie's comment about GitHub Actions. GitHub Actions can do that, right? So like I build my container, I do kube, it pushes it to a registry, I edit the YAML, and I do a kube apply, and and it'll do that, right? Kubernetes will do that. But there comes a couple of challenges with that, right? The first challenge is configuration drift. So, when you apply something and the system, something happens to the system, there's no remedy to that, right? And so or if someone else does something imperative to the system, right? Especially in a multi-tenant Kubernetes system, right? My GitHub action, right? I build an application, it'll deploy it to Kubernetes, but then Whitney comes along and does, outside of the CI/CD process, you do a kubectl edit the deployment and change the replica from 1 to 0. Right now, my application's down. There's no way for my CI system to know that happened, right? You did something to the system without me knowing, and it's different from what I want, right? So and Eddie says yes, that's what happens on the action. So like someone changes it, and I don't know something happened. The system doesn't know something happened. Only Whitney knows something happened. She changed something, and so that's one problem, right? It's configuration drift. Is how do I make sure what's running is actually running? So there's that aspect of it. There's and then there's also the aspect of what I just said about the images, right? So some people have, when they build an application, they say, hey, I'm going to tag this for prod. And then and then you push that image to prod. Someone can force push a change to that specific tag outside the CI system. Like I can build the application and tag it as, if I have access to the registry and I have access to prod, and I tag the image as prod, I can change the image to say hello world, right? Or whatever, like, or goodbye world, and force push that, and then Kubernetes will deploy it, right? And so there's also that policy, right? The policy enforcement of like, okay, how do I know what's running is really running, and how do I enforce that policy from a system, right? And so in the before times, and it kind of seems, I like when you wrote in the before times, because with Kubernetes it's still so new, but in the before times is like 6 years now, or 7 years, I forget how long. 2013, 2014. Anyway, Kubernetes came out. That's really, everyone started changing their pipelines from like manually deploying to doing a kubectl apply, and that is great, right? That was a great step. However, it doesn't solve the problems of like configuration drift, policy enforcement, and ease of use, really. And so this is how someone would deploy something to Kubernetes in the before times, right? And so again, I love. Someone once told me the way to sound smart is to quote smart people. So I'm going to quote. I'm gonna keep quoting Kelsey Hightower here. Kelsey Hightower. I'm gonna sound a little bit like a hipster. Is like I saw him before he was cool, right? He did a meetup back when he was with CoreOS in San Francisco, I believe. But he said that Kubernetes is how you design a system. If I took your SSH keys away, right? So if I took your SSH keys away, if I took SSH access away from you, how do you design a system? And so Kubernetes is that answer. And so what Argo CD and GitOps in general attempts to answer is, well, how do you design a system if I took kubectl away from you? So not only did I take away I'm going to take SSH away from you, and you know what? I'm also going to take away kubectl. So how do you interact with the system if I took away not only SSH, but I'm also taking away kubectl? And really, that's I think that's where I like to start anytime I talk about Argo CD. It's like, okay, you're really deep into Kubernetes. What if I took away kubectl away from you? What if I took kubectl away from your CI system? I'm taking not just away from you, but also Eddie, anyone else doing things in CI. If I took kubectl out of CI, what if I just deleted rm-rf kubectl? maybe not R, but kubectl, right? So there's no kubectl. How do you manage the system? And really, that's what Argo CD is aiming to do, I think. For me, from a high level. So before going too deep into Argo CD, I do have to mention that Argo CD is part of a larger ecosystem of DevOps tools called Argo Project, right? So the Argo Project houses many tools. And these tools are, I love the Argo Project. I don't want to say motto, key, catchphrase, whatever it is get stuff done with Kubernetes. And and really that's what these tool sets are for. So the Argo Project was released by Intuit, right? So it was developed internally by Intuit. These tools essentially they developed to abstract Kubernetes away from the developers, right? And so people like me, so like DevOps, SRE people, we love this stuff, right? Like I love architecture, I love building networks, I love like true developers. They don't care about that. Honestly, I've always at Red Hat and even now here at CodeFresh, I always say like developers don't want to touch. They don't care. They just want to code. They want to sit in front of VS Code or IntelliJ or Eclipse.
Their app logic is what.
Exactly. That all they care is about their applications. Oh, by the way, for those of you in the chat, drop in if you're using anything other than VS Code. I have a buddy of mine. He goes, I use IntelliJ. I'm like, wow, are you like the last one? Some people, but let's see if anyone's using something other than VS Code. I came from Neo Vim, but that was my past. I still use VS Code nowadays.
But no judgment though. No judgment.
Yeah, no judgment. I just want to see. It's I used to use Vim for a long time, just straight Vim. So in the before times, I didn't have code completion. I just did everything by memory. So also
take this moment to acknowledge some comments in chat, if that's okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So Abhishek says Goland.
Goland's good.
And VS Code all the way from Hannah.
Yeah.
Now Anul has come in. Hello, Anul. Sorry for the late hello. And then again, kind of a deep question for something we're not ready for. But can you give a quick answer to how do you handle release dependencies with Argo CD?
Yeah, and I'm actually going to get deeper into that. There's different deployment strategies within Argo CD and other tool sets. I just kind of sort of started touching on other tool sets within the Argo ecosystem
Yeah.
that can help with that. So,
okay, so we'll get there, but the answer is you can do it.
yes.
Cool. And then, great. And then Abhishek said they spent many years with Vim.
Yeah.
And now VS Code a couple of years.
So same with me. So that's
Yeah.
he's on the same path I am. So on that VS Code thing, the developers just want to sit in front of their code, in code and just code. They don't want to care about anything else. So in Intuit, they actually acquired a company called Applatics, right? And they took that engineering team and they basically developed a suite of tools and open source those tools. And the suite of tools was released under one umbrella project called the Argo project, which includes Argo workflows, which was actually the most popular one if you count stars on GitHub. Argo workflows was one of them. Argo CD, Argo rollouts, Argo events, and I think I'm missing one. Hannah, help me out here if I'm missing one. So the Argo events and notifications, Argo notifications. And so essentially it's a suite of DevOps tools that builds on top of Kubernetes, and it's meant to abstract Kubernetes away from the end user, really.
Excellent.
So Argo CD in itself is meant for continuous deployment, continuous delivery, and which is the name Argo CD, right? And so I don't want to get too deep into it because I know there's like about Argo CD, but many people glom together CI/CD, and that's just because of Jenkins. People are just used to Jenkins, and Jenkins build a platform. People say CI/CD, and it's like, well, it's one process, but there's two parts to it, CI and CD, and they could be decoupled, especially in Kubernetes and especially microservices. You actually kind of want to decouple those, and so that's the idea with Argo CD is they just focus on the continuous delivery, continuous deployment. So,
so the D and CD, it's delivery and deployment.
Yes. So continuous deploy. I'm gonna get these. If I get these backwards, someone correct me in the chat, please. Continuous delivery. Yeah, delivery. Continuous delivery is automatically deploying to your test environment. So you're deploying. So once your build finishes and the test pass, you automatically deploy it to like dev or test, sandbox, whatever your environment is to test your applications. And that's really where I'm just like making this number up. This like I think where 90% of people are right now. And then there's continuous deployment, which this is the scary one. So if you're gonna mark this one, or if you're gonna circle it, this Engin, you really need to give us a pronunciation guide. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. But yeah, delivery stops before production. Continuous deployment deploys into production automatically. So these are the Netflix of the world, right? Where it's like if it passed tests, if everything's passing, just deploy it to production. And that's really scary to a lot of people. I don't think a lot of people are there yet. But that's those are the differences between the two, and these are the two that Argo CD focuses on. Hence the name Argo CD. And so so what Argo CD attempts to do, right? It uses a GitOps methodology to solve some of the problems of manually applying applications. Yeah, that's scary. Do the scary one. That's a scary one. I always say, anytime I talk about CI/CD and Argo and the differences, I say that's the scary one. I'm admit it from here and there. Not a lot of people are ready for that, and not a lot of people do that. I mean, like I said, the Netflixes of the world maybe do that. Yeah, scary. There we go. Underline it. And so, And so what Argo CD, I was saying, it
So you're
adopts
saying about
Mhm.
GitOps approach, but I'd like to
Yeah.
define what is a GitOps approach.
Yes. So thank you for asking that question. You're leading me on to I'm part of the GitOps working group,
Okay.
and that's a SIG, right? A special interest group within the application delivery SIG in the
Mhm.
CNCF. So there's a lot of subgroups within subgroups, right? So it's
Mhm.
and the GitOps working group is governs Open GitOps, and Open GitOps defines what GitOps is, right? And
Okay.
so if you guys go to opengitops.dev,
Mhm.
we defined what GitOps is, and there's just 4 principles for GitOps, right?
Okay.
So the first principle is that it's declarative, right? So this shouldn't be a surprise to anyone if you're using Kubernetes,
Mhm.
because Kubernetes is declarative, but we have to call it out anyways. Is a system managed by GitOps must have its desired state expressed declaratively, right? So it has to be declarative.
And so that's similar to your envelope metaphor from earlier. That
yes,
you declaratively say where you want the letter to go, and you're not defining the steps it takes to get there.
correct. Yes, yeah. So
Okay.
exactly 100%. Couldn't say it better myself. So you're not defining the steps, right? It's declarative versus imperative. The second principle, I'm sorry, go
And
ahead.
then what exactly is declarative? Like the application definition, I guess
Yeah.
all of it. The
declarative,
environments, the configuration. Okay.
if you're declarative in that Kubernetes manifest, right? So we're talking
Okay.
how to manage Kubernetes. So YAML, again, anyone using JSON, drop it in the drop it in the chat. I do want to take a poll.
I feel like anyone's afraid to at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
If I did,
No
I would
judgment
just
here.
say it.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't
No
believe
judgment
you.
here. Yeah.
So
and
declarative with Kubernetes manifest, does
Yeah.
that count? Like, is there another way to be declarative, or can I write as part of this definition declarative with the Kubernetes manifest?
so it's just Kubernetes. Think about it in the frame of Kubernetes. So
Okay.
and it needs to be declarative, right? These
Okay.
are written. So I need to differentiate between my opinion and what the principles are stating. The principles aren't specific for a reason, right? So
Okay. Yeah.
it just says a system managed by GitOps must be desired, have its state desired.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe put in another color because it's my opinion. Kubernetes manifest.
I'm gonna put example. I'm gonna
Yes,
qualify that it's an example. Yeah.
Yeah, example. Yeah, Kubernetes manifest. So YAML. And so that's the first principle, is that it's declarative. Second principle is that it's versioned and immutable. So what is they did build on top of each other? What is version immutable? The declarations, right? So it states that the desired state is stored in a way that enforces immutability, versioning, and retains a complete version history. So this is another example, Git, right? So this is where it gets the name Git. Note because Git is versioned, Git is immutable, right? And Git maintains a complete version history of those manifests, right? Note that it didn't explicitly say Git, because you can use other things, right? You can use S3 buckets, right? Those are also versioned, immutable, right?
Okay.
I mean, I personally wouldn't use it. I mean, I'm all into Git, but it doesn't mean it's wrong that you're not using Git, right?
So even though it's called GitOps methodology, you could use it without Git.
Correct. Git is a buzzword, so we just jumped on that train.
Right on.
And so it's version immutable, declaration stored in Git. That's the example. That's where I store my things. If you don't, that's fine, but drop it in the chat. If you use S3 or something else.
That's There's
No
one
judgment.
person out there who's using IntelliJ to
Yeah, IntelliJ,
with their
JSON.
and their S3 buckets, and they're
Yes,
like
exactly.
curled up in a ball, afraid to talk to us.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine. You're not out of compliance, so you're all in. That's all. That's all that matters. And so number three is important, especially to Eddie. So Eddie, so 3 is pulled automatically. So it's so this differentiates it from something like webhooks or something like like scripts firing off or something like that. The software agents automatically pull the desired state from the source, right? So first it's declarative, stored somewhere, but the software agents then pull those, right? So it's not a push. So let's I'm going to try to be very this is very explicit. So having your CI system push changes to a Kubernetes cluster is not GitOps. If there's a software system, so like something like Argo CD, which we're talking about today, but other things like Flux or I forget the other one, Pipe CD, there's other things, they reach out to Git and pull those declarations down. That is GitOps. It's very nuanced and it's very specific, but that's what pulled automatically means, is that the software agent essentially does a Git clone.
I have a guess that this is what prevents configuration drift, because if you're waiting to push changes, I could be making all my manual stuff over here and it's not seeing that until somebody pushes something.
Correct. Yeah. So this is part one. So you got half of it. That's one of the reasons that prevents a configuration drift. But what prevents configuration drift is number 4. But to round out number 3 is essentially there's a piece of software that does a Git clone. It essentially sits there, does a Git clone versus the CI system pushing those changes out. So that's the difference.
So declarations are pulled automatically.
Yes,
I think I want to
they're pulled.
Verify that we're talking about declarations.
Yeah. Okay. So they pull the desired state.
Good. The declarations are the desired state. It's the same thing. I can write that.
Automatically pulled. So they are pulled. There we go. And the last one is that it's continuously reconciled. So so that's the one. So the software agents continuously observe the state of the system and the attempt to apply the desired state.
I have a question.
Yes.
When they're out of sync, is the application reconciled to be like the declaration, or is the declaration reconciled to be like the application?
So so you have your desired state,
which is the declaration.
In Git, correct. And then you have your running state, which is what is running on the system. So the system must match what is in Git, essentially.
So the running application is modified. If we're out of sync, the running application is what's modified to match the declarative.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
And that is the fourth principle, is that it's just continuously reconciled. So you don't need to run a CI to make sure that something's in sync. You don't need to do webhooks. The system just automatically does it. And it's and this is really the crown jewel of GitOps, is that it's continuously reconciled. And so I like to describe GitOps. GitOps is modeled after Kubernetes for obvious reasons, and it's modeled after what they call the closed loop control theory. So in control theory, there's something called a closed loop, where where essentially there's a loop that's running, and all it's trying to do is trying to do what you tell it to do. So, and it's like, okay, well, before everyone starts Googling control theory and closed loops and anything, it's just really simply, I think, I forget who gave this example, and someone can find this quote somewhere, please give them credit. But think about a thermostat, right? So think about you're in Texas, so so this should be something close to your heart. So you have an air conditioner. So like in my old apartment, I had a wall mounted air conditioner. So what that meant is that if I sat there and I got hot, I go, okay, well, I'm gonna stand up and turn on my air conditioner. All right, I turn on my air conditioner, and then I go, you know what? It's getting a little too cold. I think I'm fine now. I'm gonna stand up and turn that off. Right. That is what I would call traditional CI/CD.
Okay.
Like there's an event that happens. It's an event based thing. I got hot. There was an event. I stood up. I turned it on. Another event happened. I got cold. Okay, let me go and turn it off. Get that with GitOps. GitOps is more like a thermostat.
Yeah.
So I set my desired state. I want it to be 72 degrees. And then the thermostat continuously monitors the temperature, and it turns on and off the air conditioner without me having to do anything. I just set my declaration. That is GitOps, essentially. It just continues.
On the couch with your feet up.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. You're comfortable, and you trust. Again, remember the promise theory. You trust that the thermostat is doing its job, right? And it essentially, it's what it is, a control theory. It's a closed loop. It's not waiting for input, right? It just took the initial input and it's just continuously monitoring if the input matches what temperature it is. It's right 72. I'm gonna turn on and off whenever I need to, and that is GitOps.
That's great analogy. I love that.
So we have GitOps. Oh, sorry. Just to round it out, GitOps essentially is the thermostat. What I have now. So.
So we have some comments from chat. Hannah says, I love this discussion. We're really laying down the nuts and bolts of GitOps and how Argo CD supports it from a functional perspective. Yep. And then Eddie says, amazing live stream. Thank you. Sorry I have to go, but we'll catch up on what you missed after all. Thank you. When you watch this recording later, thank you so much, Eddie, for coming. And then Khalid. Hello, welcome, Khalid. How does GitOps handle environment variables like a config map?
Yeah, a config map is just something you would store, right? Config map's nothing other than a declaration, and that is sitting in Git. So you make a change in a config. You make a change in a config map. Argo CD will see that change, and then it'll apply it to your system.
So when we're talking about all these declarations here, you could substitute declarations for config map.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
Thanks for your question.
So we have GitOps, right? And Argo CD is built on the GitOps methodology. GitOps, it is essentially, it was built from a ground up. So, talking about before times, I used to run a Twitch stream, GitOps Guide to the Galaxy, and I had one of the engineers / architects of Argo CD, and Alex, and I don't know how. Alex M, we call him Alex M. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. So Alex, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. But he said they built it from the ground up. The Argo CD from the ground up was always meant to be a GitOps tool. And so Argo CD is meant to be compliant with the GitOps methodology. And so
nice. So from the ground up, these principles were considered when building Argo CD.
When building Argo CD, yes. So so how does Argo CD work, right? And so so now that you thought about like what happened in the before times, right? Now you got your SSH taken away. I'm taking your kubectl away. You have we have these methodologies. How do I build a system with Argo CD, right? So Argo CD is runs on a Kubernetes cluster, right? So it essentially is you take a Kubernetes cluster and install Argo CD, and Argo CD has a few components that are running in it, right? So it has an API, right? So You install it, and once you install it, it installs an API service. And essentially, an API, the Argo CD API service, is the interface for everything, right? You're going to go through it, whether whether you're doing it via the Argo CD UI, whether you're doing it with the CLI, you're going to do gRPC REST query, whatever you are interfacing with the API. So so Argo CD has an API system, and that API system front ends a few controllers, right? And there's really two main controllers. There's other controllers depending on like how you're bulking up your Argo CD installation, but the API system interfaces with two main controllers. The first controller is the repository service controller. So the repository service controller, its main job is to interact with your Git system. So it doesn't matter which Git you're using, it's all it's all SSH keys in the end. Anyways, we're talking about taking away SSH keys. I'm taking them away and giving them to Argo. It basically, repository service controller interacts with Git, and its only job is to make sure that it has a fresh copy of your repo.
Okay.
And that's like 90% of its job. Argo CD also supports Helm charts. And I don't know if you've done an episode of Helm before, but if you don't, I have someone that can come on and talk about Helm. I have a couple guys who are deep into the Helm ecosystem, so that'd be a great episode. But it also interacts with your Helm repository as well. So it does. 90% of its job is to work with Git, and because most people store their Helm charts in Git, but if you're just using Helm, directly with the repo, it'll also interact with the Helm repo as well directly. So, but its job is still the same whether you're using Git or whether you're using Helm. Is that its main job is to make sure that it has a fresh copy of your declarations. So, and it runs continuously in a loop, right? It checks every 3 minutes. By default, you can adjust that, but it'll continuously pull the fresh copy. So that's one, right? Repository server. And then the next controller is the application controller. So this is going to be, I feel like this episode is going to be an episode of overloaded terms. And so, I mean, everything in tech, right? Everything's an overloaded term. So I'm gonna come back to what an application is. I'll define that, but just so you know, application controller is essentially makes sure it's basically number 4, right? So its primary job is to make sure that your declaration matches what's running on the cluster, right? That's its main job. So you can map it to number 4, essentially, and the repository server match it to number 3. So yeah, it ensures actual state is the declarative state, and that's what the application controller does. There's a few other controllers depending on how you install Argo CD, but these are the main 2 ones that you get. And so there's other ones like Dex, right? There's a Dex controller that manages SSO. There's application set controller, but these are the main 2 ones. And these are the when you're first starting with Argo CD, these are the 2 that you're going to interact with. And then if you want to drop, there's a question in the chat. There's a really good question. So while you're drawing that, I can answer this question if you want to drop it. So see, it's here. What scale do you need to run it as HA? I have a cluster with around 60 application. I deployed it as a standalone. It's working just fine. And then when do you think I would need to change it, right? And so the the answer to that question is that you really there's a caching layer also. You really want to scale your caching layer. And then there is an HA mode with Argo CD. Argo CD's Argo CD, you need to get the Windex out.
Well, I'm actually smiling because when I was first learning tech, HA, I didn't understand it as the letters HA. I thought it was some like Spanish word, like
ECH, yeah. HA, yeah, okay,
It took
HA.
me a long time to really figure out like high availability. Yeah,
high
HA.
availability. So for those who are
Yeah.
thinking about like the scale of Argo CD, Intuit uses it to run everything internally. So don't worry about scale. They they handle scales just fine. But there are some considerations. There's actually on the Argo CD website, there's a section about running it HA, and it's essentially you're just scaling your repository service controller, so that way it because your repos can get pretty big, right? So it'll eat up a lot of memory trying to keep all that in memory. So that's just one thing you need to work out to look out for, and you can find that in the documentation. So there you go. So you have your repository server and application controller.
Mm-hmm.
So and so what is an application? So now we're talking about overloaded terms. Now let's talk about like terms. What is an application? So an application in Argo CD is a CRD, right? A custom resource definition.
Mm-hmm.
But an application is a collection. In Argo CD, an application is a collection of related Kubernetes manifests, right? So or Helm charts, right? So a collection of related Kubernetes manifests or Helm charts. So like, yes.
Isn't a Helm chart just a
question from the front?
Isn't a Helm chart just a type of declaration? Is there a reason you're differentiating the two?
There is. So a Helm chart is like you should save the deep part of this for your Helm chart. But a Helm chart is just, you can think of it as a package manager for Kubernetes. It's a de facto package manager for Kubernetes. So like if you ever use like Yum or RPM or Debian packages, or for you Java people, Warfile or Earfile, it's just a collection of it's a package management system. So and it's a templating engine essentially for your application. So yeah, I'll hook you up with someone from the from the Helm community. You can do a great episode on Helm.
Okay.
So all an application is a collection of related Kubernetes manifests or Helm charts. So meaning that it's not just, so some people think of an application as a deployment, deployment, service, and ingress, right? And so, but it could be much more than that, right? An application could be like 5 different deployments with 5 different services. It could be, it could be, a deployment, a service route, Helm chart, plus another deployment and service for the back end, right? Like it's, there's no really, it's kind of like, your dreams, right? Application in Argo CD could be whatever you want it to be, right? It's a collection of related YAML, essentially.
What was the second one you said? 5 deployments and 5 services. What was the second one you said?
It could be, a deployment, a service, and a Helm chart. Like it could be like different, different things. It could be, it doesn't have to be only YAML.
It could be like storage or databases. Can it be like SaaS? Like, can it be outside of the cluster?
It could be, as long as it's related to Kubernetes, right? So it's essentially Kubernetes manifests, whether you're doing straight YAML or Helm or a combination of it. It's not a if or, right? It's a yes and, right? It could be YAML, only YAML. It could be only Helm. It could be YAML and Helm. And as long as they're related, it's the atomic unit. So an Argo CD manages your application small a with an application capital A, and that's the atomic unit of Argo CD. So there's an application.
We have a question. Are you familiar
Mhm.
with CAP, with the
Yeah,
Carvel tool set?
yeah.
Is an
I was
Argo application a different CRD than a CAP application?
Yes, which is why I say it's an overloaded term. Everyone
Uh-huh.
everyone uses application differently, but yes, it's a different CRD. Um,
Okay.
and so that's so the application controller makes sure that your application is always in sync. And what is an application? Application is a collection of related Kubernetes manifests. Um, so that's how it handles it, right? So
Uh-huh.
does um, when you do like when it does a sync, right? It does it at the application level, right? So it does it
Uh-huh.
as a whole unit, atomic unit. So that's what an Argo CD application is. So in the Argo CD application, it's basically um, uh, in the Argo CD application, there's different parameters you can set, right? And like really,
Mm-hmm.
the main parameters you set, it's basically just another Kubernetes YAML, but an Argo CD
Mm-hmm.
application looks. You set the target state, meaning that like you point it to uh, a repository, whether it be Git or Helm. But
Mm-hmm.
let's just stick to Git right now. You point it to a Git repository. You point it to the path, the directory path you want it to look in, and you point it to either a branch or a tag, a Git tag or whatever, and say like, I want this
Uh-huh.
is my target state. I want my application to be in this state,
Uh-huh.
and then you tell it where to look, right? So or the live state is like where to look. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this Kubernetes cluster, right? Because you can
Mm-hmm.
point it to different Kubernetes clusters. I want this Kubernetes clusters in this namespace, and
Mm-hmm.
then the application controller
Mm-hmm.
tries to match those two.
So you point Argo CD, when you say declarations,
Mhm.
what you're pointing it to is a folder that contains this application that
Yes.
consists of many different declarations. And then
Yes.
you're also pointing it to the place in Kubernetes where you want that application to run, like whatever cluster.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. I'm feeling like I want to draw. It seems like this, do I have room to like
Yeah.
draw
Right.
here? Like
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
like a
Right there.
diagram? Yeah.
Yeah. Like if you have a ladder or something, I don't know.
Oh, no, I
Try.
can reach. It's by
Oh,
design.
okay. There you go.
Yeah.
Right. Awesome.
Um, so it would be kind of like if I'm drawing a picture, I'm picturing like 3 rectangles. One represents Git, one represents Argo, one represents Kubernetes, right?
Yes. Yeah. And
With
Argo can yeah. So let's draw it that way because
we can
Argo
always erase it. Yeah.
Argo can or may or may not live in the Kubernetes cluster that it's managing.
Okay.
It usually is, but not necessarily. But let's draw this in not let's draw this logically, right? Not actual physically, right?
And we can add that.
Mhm.
So yeah,
There you
and
go.
then I'll
See?
make this. Yeah, it's a cluster, so there are several.
Yeah, there's several things going on there.
Yeah. So here's a Kubernetes cluster, and then we'll call it target
Yeah.
because that's target.
There's a great question
Yes.
while you're drawing that.
Yeah.
So Argo CD per cluster or Argo CD for multiple clusters, which do you prefer? So I'll tell you how Intuit runs it. If you want to like a real life example, is they actually have a Kubernetes, an Argo CD cluster per environment. So I threw that wrench in there, and I think that makes the most sense. Again, the answer is always the dreaded. It depends what you're doing, right? If you're running
Yeah.
if you're running a multi-tenant system, Argo CD has amazing RBAC. However, if you want to silo them, you can have an Argo CD instance per team, or if you want to do it the Intuit way, they have it per environment. It just depends. I like the per environment design myself. So, and yeah, so it may be running inside the Kubernetes cluster. It may not, right? Because Argo CD can be a hub and spoke design as well. So it's very flexible.
Okay. I know, like I know you don't want your Git, like you want to store something separately from your cluster. So if your cluster goes down, you
Yeah.
don't lose that. Is that same logic apply to Argo CD? Like maybe you don't want it in your cluster in case the whole cluster goes down? Or
Well,
could you
yeah.
easily spin up your Argo to point at that Git repo again?
Yeah, so Argo CD is mainly stateless, meaning that and there's good and bad news with that as well. So Argo CD is pretty stateless, and that
Uh-huh.
its only job is to make sure the two are matching. Git
Okay.
repository matches your target cluster, your source matches your target.
Mm-hmm.
So if Argo CD actually goes down, your applications still stay up and running. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing. Argo CD is only is doing a make sure they match, but it doesn't actually manage.
Okay.
That's Kubernetes' job. It
Yeah.
lets Kubernetes do what it does. Um, so actually, Argo CD going down is only a panic because work stops, but your
Mm-hmm.
but production isn't down, right? So although back in my day, if dev is down, it's like a heart. It's like production being down because no one wants a bunch of engineers sitting doing nothing. Um, if but yeah, so you can have it running in your cluster. You can have it running outside your cluster. It really just
Mm-hmm.
depends how you design it. There's no if Argo CD goes down, it's fine. It's fine in
Mm-hmm.
that your application doesn't go down. It's pretty stateless.
Mm-hmm. We have a question from Salaboy.
Mm-hmm.
How do you use GitOps to deal with information that's generated at runtime? For example, IP addresses on external SPC. What I'm
So
trying to
this is
figure out.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is really something Helm is great for. Because Helm has the ability to do lookup, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it does things like it can look up certain um, uh, certain things that are running on your cluster, like IP IP address is something that I don't know the IP address that I'm applying my application to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I can apply the same application using Argo CD to like 10 different Kubernetes clusters, and they all have different IP addresses. So how do I account for that, right? And so Helm is a great way to do that because it's parameterized, um, and customize. Also, you can do some patching. Um,
Mm-hmm.
some of it's more like I say, more art than science. Sometimes you have to bring in your CI system to do a lot of that. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of like a little bit outside the purview of Argo CD, but not this weird
Mm-hmm.
gray area. I would definitely use something like Helm for that, or be part of my CI system um, where I inspect the cluster that I'm on and I update my Git repo dynamically using CI. So that's just like another way of doing that. Um, so so yeah, so it looks secure. Yes, so you have that's exactly how I would draw it. The GitOps repository. There's YAML inside an app, which is just like a folder in a
Mm-hmm.
directory somewhere in
Okay.
Git. And so what Argo CD does, it has the two controllers and the API server, right? And so then you
Right.
have if let's start with the repository service. So the repository service here,
Uh-huh.
what
Do
it
people
does.
call it a RSC or something? Or I should write it out. I should write it out.
Well, RSC, I think now we will. That'd be cool. Because you know what we need in tech is more acronyms. We like we love acronyms.
Okay, the repository service controller. It's interacting with Git
Yeah.
to make sure the cluster has a fresh copy of the repo. So the repo also lives over here.
The
So it's yeah.
yeah, it lives in Argo CD. So like it basically does a git clone, and it clones it in a directory inside the Argo system itself.
Oh,
So
I thought you said Argo is stateless.
it is, because it doesn't store it stores it in temp. Like it stores it
Okay.
it stores it locally. If it goes down, it'll check to see if
It is,
it's there, and if it's not there, it'll just clone it locally. So essentially, it's in cache. What it does, it stores it in cache.
okay. So the controller is going to go to this
Yep.
and take it and then put it here.
Put it
And
there.
And
Perfect.
so now it lives here. Okay.
There it is.
The number one. Okay.
Yeah. And
Kind of
so
poorly drawn. I can do better. I'm
yeah.
listening. It's like a little, I don't know, factory. Anyway, I'm listening. I'm listening.
Yeah. Factory. Yes, I like that. It does look like a factory. I didn't actually. And so there you go. And then so now we have the other controller, the application controller.
Uh-huh.
So the application controller looks in that local cache, right? So it'll look,
Uh-huh.
and then that's the desired state, right? And so here,
Okay.
so it'll if you can maybe draw an arrow. I don't know how you would draw an
Yeah.
arrow.
I'm gonna just make this lower.
Yeah. So the application controller looks at that that declaration in the cache,
Uh-huh.
and then it'll look at the Kubernetes cluster, its target cluster, and if they're the same, it does nothing. It basically it does
Okay.
absolutely nothing. It just dies silently. It says, well, not die silently, not silently at least. It'll in the log it'll say, oh, they're they match. There's nothing to do. Goodbye, right? And so but if there is something to do, right? If there is a
Mhm.
difference, it'll basically do how do I depends. How much time do we have? Okay, we have some time.
Oh no.
It'll try
Okay.
to sync the running state with the desired state. And so and then there you go. It'll do that sync, right? And so the it'll do it by doing what we call a three-way diff, right? A
Uh-huh.
three-way diff. So this is something not specific to Argo CD. It's just basically how Kubernetes works.
Uh-huh.
It basically looks at the desired state,
Mm-hmm.
the running state,
Mm-hmm.
and the last applied configuration. So there's so basically, what did this
That's
file look like before?
Mm-hmm.
And then
That's what
it'll
Kubernetes does, yeah?
yes, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then what it does is it develops a patch file, and it'll do it. Basically, does a kubectl apply to the patch file. So the Alex M, formerly from Intuit, now he's at Acuity, but he called it, and Henrik, who is the product manager at Intuit, hates when you say this, but Argo CD essentially is a glorified kubectl. And it's
I'm
designed
feeling
that
it.
it's designed that way on purpose, right? Because it
Uh-huh.
wants to be as Kubernetes native as possible.
Well, I mean, and it's working over here. So why would you remake something that clearly is doing,
It's like this was already written for me. Why do I need to,
yeah.
why do I need to try to
reinvent the wheel? Yeah.
Yeah. And so so it'll do, so it'll do desired, running, and last applied. It'll develop a patch and it'll try to apply that. And so that and that is what, from a high level, that's how kind of what Kubernetes Argo CD interacts with Kubernetes. And sitting in front of that, you don't have room to draw it, but the API server is what it's how you interact with Argo CD. You don't actually interact with these controllers directly. You interact with the API. When by I mean you, I mean not only like the royal you, but also systems, right? Like tools, automation, CLI, gRPC requests, robots, ghosts, whatever, interact with Argo CD via the API server. And then the API server then handles those requests to the backend systems for you. Ghosts, yes, exactly. However you want to interact with Argo CD. Yeah.
It's kind of went too high from the top, but we have a question.
Yes, great question.
Oops, I didn't mean that one. This one first. I wonder about the declarative principle. Wouldn't having a system that fetches secrets or using tools such as Customize and Helm go against this principle, as they are imperative processes?
Well, see, so the you're defining what you're defining how the YAML is going to look like, not how to apply it, right? And so that's the so like with things with Helm and Customize, you share, you may have an argument with the lookup process. That his next comment is talking about the lookup function. That's
Perfect.
very interesting. That's very interesting. But you may have a point there. But going back to your original question, just Helm and Customize, you're just defining. It's essentially defining how the YAML is going to look like, not how to apply it, right? So essentially it's not it's a declarative, it's an imperative way to set up your declarations. But the declarations itself are still declarative. The lookup function, that's a very interesting thing. And that is, if you want to discuss that, I actually invite people to come to the Open GitOps working groups meeting. We have discussions like this all the time about what's imperative, what is declarative, what is GitOps, what isn't GitOps. If you haven't seen OpenGitOps.dev, the GitOps principles are versioned. It's version 1.0, which means that this is an evolving space. We can always go back and modify those declarations. But I actually would like to share, if you wouldn't mind coming on to one of our meetings. We would like to discuss the lookup function, but I think you have an interesting point there. So there's another great question. So so Argo CD doesn't check the service account field because it considers it managed field, so Argo leaves it alone. I was able to manually change it in the live state, and the desired state was still saying on sync. Is there a way? So yes, so Argo CD it tries to do an apply. And this has nothing to do with Argo CD. The same thing happens with Flux. Same thing happens with kubectl. This is a Kubernetes thing because of the three-way diff and the three-way patch. And it does an apply by default. And if it doesn't apply, there's some things that are immutable. There's like some fields are managed fields. Some fields are immutable fields. Some things are like arrays, right? So like if you have like like in a pod, you can mention multiple containers. Sometimes when you change the container name or something, it'll actually add another container instead of updating the container because it doesn't apply. Argo CD has an option that does a replace. So basically kubectl replace. I'd want to say be very careful when you do a replace.
Yeah.
Because a replace is essentially a delete, recreate. And if you're doing a replace like on a CRD, that could be very dangerous. So anyway, to answer your question, I want to call you Leary, because Lear 770. There's you can try to do replace instead of apply, and that'll get around some of these issues about just kind of like the Kubernetes apply situation that happens. And so David, yes, he's asking, are those meetings recorded? Yes, Open GitOps meetings, all of them are recorded. It takes a while for them to get uploaded. We need help again. You asked how to get it. People ask how to get involved with open source. Things like this, helping us uploading our recordings to YouTube is one of them. And so, yeah, OpenGitOps.dev, share OpenGitOps.dev. There is a tab, click on Get Involved. So that's how you get up with OpenGitOps.
Is OpenGitOps.dev also where they can find a link to past meetings? Or...
Yes, it's all there. There's links to all kinds of stuff there, but getting involved, yes.
Cool. Excellent. This is
all
great.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. So now we have an Argo CD system. So now there's other aspects to Argo CD. So Argo CD, again, remember it's on the Argo project, getting stuff done with Kubernetes. Argo CD has a UI that you can actually manage a lot of this, and it has some tools that are meant to make this easier to use and to make this multi-tenant, right? And so we talked about applications, right? Application are a collection of related Kubernetes manifests. In Argo CD, there's a concept of projects. So what is
Okay.
a project? A project is nothing more than a collection of related applications. so
Oh,
so there's
okay.
a project, right? And it's really a project is really just meant to isolate applications from other applications.
Oh,
So
that makes sense.
to make it like a really multi-tenant system. So if if I'm running a team, right, that's running 5 applications, I'm going to pick on one of the viewers. I don't want Sheer to be able to log in and see and modify my my applications. Um, so I put all my applications under a project that I manage, that I control, and this is where RBAC happens. So
Okay.
so RBAC in Argo CD is completely separate from the RBAC from Kubernetes. So it has its own
Okay.
RBAC, has its own RBAC system. The
Okay.
reason for that is it's good news and bad news. People like it. Personally, I love it. People hate it. But if you think about the philosophy of Argo CD is supposed to abstract Kubernetes away from the developer and be developer centric, and that's why it's completely different from Kubernetes RBAC. So
So when we say, I just want to, some people are newer. When we say RBAC, we mean role-based access control.
Role-based access control, yes.
Yeah.
So like I have a project and I give access to, I don't know, the foobar, right? So foobar, I am part of the foobar group, and I say anyone who's part of the foobar group and can access my project, right? And so RBAC happens at the project level. So when you want to say who has access to my application, I set the RBAC to the project level, and then they can have read-only access, they can have read-write access, they can it's very granular, right? And so it's extremely granular. It's basically an ACL based RBAC system. So ACL is access control list. So meaning that like who can it's based on the APIs, right? Who can get projects, who can sync projects, who can, right? It's basically API endpoints. So and Leary wants to know where I could connect. You can connect with me if you want to throw on my Twitter handle.
Yeah.
Right there. So for those, can I point? There we go. So right there, this is my GitHub, Twitter, everything handle right there. You can also find me on the CNCN Slack, right? So if you go to slack.cncf.io, that is where you'll find me in the Argo, communities there. That's where I hang out. So for those of you, or Twitter, right, you can just send me a tweet here, and I can send you the link to the CNCF Slack. So it's open, anyone can join. It's community driven, so it's all fun, and you can find me there answering questions. So then that is projects. So project is basically a collection of applications, and that's where RBAC happens. So someone says I know you already. You already helped me out in the CNCF channel. I'm like, okay, so there you go.
Wonderful.
Cool.
Awesome. I love that.
Yeah, I'm glad I was able to help. And so you have you set access levels there. So
yeah, set access levels.
So let's talk a little bit about the deployment strategies, right? So we talked about how Argo, I call them deployment strategies, but really they're sync strategies, because that's really what's happening on the back end, right? The application controller just syncs.
Before you move on away from isolation, I know that RBAC is a good way to isolate within Kubernetes, but also multi-tenancy. Are you about to get into that with yours? Is that where you're going?
Well, that's the multi-tenancy happens in the project, right? And so like I have the project is the tenant, right? So which is it abstract. So this is kind of where people get tripped up between Kubernetes, Kubernetes and Argo, right? Because in a project, I can manage many namespaces, right? One project, like if I can have like 4 or 5 namespaces in a project.
the question I meant to ask was not multi-tenancy, but multi-cluster. Like,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
how does Argo CD work if it's a multi-cluster situation?
yeah. So there is a concept of like clusters, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when you add a cluster to Argo CD, you basically
Mm-hmm.
you're giving it um,
More targets.
more targets, and what you're giving it is a a cube config file. Um,
Okay,
so you got
that makes sense.
you log into a Kubernetes cluster, and you take that cube config file and you give it to Argo CD, and then you name it something, right? Cluster one.
Okay.
And
Uh-huh.
so, and that's on the application level. So, like when the application, you say, I want to deploy it to a cluster, you just give it a name, like cluster one,
Okay.
and it just already knows because it stores it in a secret.
Uh-huh. So if you had multiple clusters, you would have your Argo CD outside of probably one individual cluster. You could reference, you could say your Argo CD to be like, okay, app one, I want it deployed in all of these like geographical regions, for example, and it
Yeah,
would take care of that for you. Okay,
yeah,
cool. I
yeah.
just wanted to talk out multi-cluster.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So the multi-cluster, yeah. So multi-cluster is on the application level, and then
Okay.
but you add it to Argo CD. Argo CD will manage that for you. Like you just give it the kubectl files, sorry, the kube config files,
Okay.
and then you name
That
it
makes sense.
something, and then
Yeah,
when you are creating your applications, you just give it the target that you want to deploy it to.
that makes a lot of
Um,
sense.
and that's also something you can RBAC against in a project. So you can say, a project foobar has access to cluster ones and two, and that's
Uh-huh.
it, right? Three, four,
Yeah.
five. That's another team's
Okay.
cluster, and I can't. If you're part of that group, if I'm part of that group, I can't see the other clusters. I can only see my clusters.
Okay.
Um, so that's the
Nice.
RBAC, and again, RBAC is specific to project. So
Okay. That was helpful for me to walk through. So thank
yes,
you.
yeah,
We have another question from Leary. How would you recommend to manage the Argo CD itself?
yes.
What are some best practices?
Yeah, so there's a few ways to install Argo CD. I recommend installing it. There's a Helm chart, but I wouldn't install it that way. Not because the Helm chart is bad or wrong, but because um, uh, upgrades could get a little weird. So
Okay.
I usually install Argo CD with like the YAML manifests. Argo CD, if you go to the documentation page, right, for Argo CD,
Mm-hmm.
essentially one big YAML file. What I do is I take that and I put it in Git. So so essentially I use Argo to manage Argo. So I install Argo CD. Once it finishes installing, I can take that YAML and then put it in Git and then point Argo to that. It's kind of like Inception, chicken egg sort of thing, right? Like yeah,
We did an episode on Crossplane most recently a couple weeks ago, and it's a
yeah.
similar
Yeah,
vibe. Uh-huh.
yeah, similar vibe.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's like you
Uh-huh.
install it. All right, once it's
Uh-huh.
installed, then I put the installation manifest in Git,
Uh-huh.
and then point Argo to that Git. So it's kind of like managing itself,
Yeah.
and that's how I do it. There's also other tools. I can almost hear Hannah squirming in her seat. There's also other tools. The Argo project has an incubation program called Argo Labs, and in Argo Labs, there's something called Argo CD Autopilot, which does all of that for you. It bootstraps, it creates the Git repo, and it installs all the manifests, the installation manifests in the Git repo, and then it points Argo CD to those. It does that all in one command. So
Mhm.
yeah, so someone put in the chat Argo CD Autopilot. That is a fantastic way if you don't want to do everything manually. If you want just a tool to do it for you, Argo CD Autopilot. It's an incubation right now in Argo Labs, but it's actually, so if you're concerned that it's incubating, don't be. CodeFresh, we use it internally for our systems, so it's not like it's not battle tested. It's 100% battle tested. There's just it just takes a while for things to come out of incubation, right? You just never know. So yeah, so just to answer Leary's question, I use you can do it manually,
Mhm.
or you can do it with Argo CD Autopilot. That is that's a way to do it automatically, hands off.
Larry has another question for you. How do you upgrade Argo CD?
So this is kind of cool. You do it with Argo CD.
Yeah.
Since Argo CD is pretty stateless, you just apply the new version of the YAML. It's essentially what's funny, what upgrading things in Kubernetes is essentially you're just changing the image things are pointing to, and it does a rolling update and just works. Just note that the API may come back, may come offline, which is fine because your applications will still be running. So it's probably a little bit more nuanced than that, but that's kind of like the high level. You just basically update the YAML, get commit, push, and then just go grab a coffee like I did, and it should be done.
Excellent.
All right. So I think we left off with deployment strategies.
Well, yeah, we were talking about syncing.
Yes. Sync strategies. So
sync strategies. Okay.
So stepping back just a little bit, right? Talking again about Kubernetes. Kubernetes was was based internally on a project called Borg inside of Google. The Google open sourced it, and I will tip my red hat. Open sourced it, and I actually knew the guy at Red Hat who was the first guy outside of Google with commit access to Kubernetes, right? And for some reason, and ironically now he works at Google. But anyway, and then so Kubernetes was built inside of Google that was just based on containers, right? Like it was just managing containers. And as we all know, containers are stateless, right? Like they can go away and they'll just come back. They're read-only, they're immutable, they're stateless. Ephemeral, all that good stuff. But like that doesn't reflect what the real world is, right? What's always great, what I love about open source, and when people open source something, when companies open source something, they go, oh wow, there's so many use cases that we never dreamed of. and it's the same with Kubernetes, right? It's like, what? People are running stateful workloads? Yeah. I think most people are. And so the idea about Kubernetes is that if something goes wrong, it's fine. It'll just restart. And if you're running a stateless workload, that's fine. The design here, it'll fail the first time. That's fine. When it runs again, it'll try to apply. It may fail again. Third time, oh, something's up and running. Okay, we're up and running.
That's a good life lesson. Don't be afraid to fail a few times.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It is like there's a quote there, like be like Kubernetes. Keep failing until you're running, right? But for applications, real life applications, stateful applications, that's not the real that's not reality, right? And so and that's something that the Argo CD and Intuit also ran into, and they came up with different strategies to apply your declarations, right? And one of them is called sync waves, right? Sync waves, right? Spelled exactly how you think it is. So sync waves.
All one word or a space?
One word. I always write it with one word. I don't know what the official what the official documentation says. You already don't like this. You want to do sync waves.
No, I just wasted space up here. That's all.
There you go. Oh, okay. There's a good question. Can we talk about Argo CD Core? Actually, we are talking about Argo CD Core right here. So Argo CD Core is basically those three components, and that's it.
These three components.
No, API, repository, application controller.
Okay.
But that's not the default install. The default install installs those and the UI and and the RBAC system and the project system. Argo CD Core is essentially just think about like edge systems, right? Like if I have a system running on the edge, if I have something like a store that's running or like a factory running a very small Kubernetes cluster, do I really need the UI? Do I really need RBAC system? No, like I just need something that does. I'm putting at my screen like you can see that middle thing that you see. I just need something that just has the API server, repository controller, application control. That's all I need. That's what Argo CD core is. So kind of just to answer your question, Argo CD core is just that. Just kind of just does the simple sync. By default, Argo CD comes with the rich ecosystem. So, so good question. Thank you for the question. So sync waves.
Sync waves.
So sync
it seems
waves.
like a good band name.
It'll be called, yeah, exactly. It's a good name for a band, or like a progressive, like 90s electronic band, sync waves.
Yeah.
So sync waves is essentially how to order things, right? So how do I order my deployments? So for example, you know what? I want my database to come up first. After that, I want my API to come up. And after that's up and running, I want my front end to come up, right? So you want to cut it up in a certain order, right? And then there's essentially they are numbered. It's numbered based, right? And it, you can do 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? It's also negative. Like you don't also put negative numbers. You can do -1. Like you can do -3, -2, -1, 0, however you want to do it. I always do 10 base because I don't to give myself wiggle room, right? So I always do 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. I'm like, oh, I forgot something. I'll put it between 10 and 20.
Nice.
But it's basically you want something to come up in order. And then there's within sync waves, there are sync phases. So sync phases are things like pre-sync, sync, and post-sync, right? So pre-sync is basically things that you want to run before anything else, right? So pre-sync could be, pre and post-syncs are usually like jobs or pods, right? I want a job that runs that, I don't know, sends a notification, or I want a job that runs that makes sure, does a database schema update, right? Which is always scary. Which is always scary, but pre-sync runs first. And then within that pre-sync, you can do a sync wave, right? So in the pre-sync, let's say you have 2 jobs. You want one that runs first and one that runs second. Right? So let's say, you can put as many things in a sync phase. So in the pre-sync, let's say you have 2 jobs. You want job 1 to run first and job 2 to run second. So you can run. So once the sync phase finishes successfully, so that's a keyword there, then it goes into the sync phase, right? So there's pre-sync and then there's the sync, which I would put in. Yeah, there's 2. There you go, and that's sync. And this is usually like what normally happens in Argo CD. So that diagram you drew up there, that is what happens in the sync phase. In the sync phase. That's a regular Argo CD. And in there you can have a sync wave as well, right? And so that's kind of like the 0 database, 1 app, 2 front end. That's kind of what happens up when you put in the example. Regular Argo CD stuff. And then the final sync phase is the post sync. So 3 is post sync. So post sync is essentially, again, where jobs run, cron jobs, whatever, pods. And that's, I always like to give the example of a Slack message. It's like, hey, your sync ran successfully, or you fire off a webhook that fires out another CI system, something, right? It's just basically, it runs last, and it's usually a job. The most common one is a Slack message, right? Slack ops is what they call it.
Slack ops, yeah.
Yeah, and then within the post sync, so within each phase, you can do a wave, right? So you have this kind of orchestrate. So sync waves essentially is a way to orchestrate things that happen. And then within each wave, so then you have the hooks, right? The pre-sync hook and the post post sync hook.
These are hooks.
Yeah, I would call them hooks. So sync waves, I would call each phase like a hook, like pre-sync hook. I don't want to muddy the waters too much, but yeah, so they're like hooks that happen before or after a sync, right? So and so yeah, regular Argo CD stuff happens. So you can orchestrate kind of like how things deploy. So for example, like I always do the 3-tiered example, because do you really want your front end to come up before your database? No, right? You want things to come up in a certain order. Now, I would argue I'm going to take off my sympathy hat for a second. I would argue if your front end should take your database being down into consideration. That's just me. But people are migrating into Kubernetes, maybe their application, it'll take a while to refactor the application, putting back my sympathy hat back on. Sync waves, sync phases, all that stuff helps you orchestrate that sync. So, and then, and that really is a way to kind of order that diagram that you wrote up there, right? So like, okay, well, I have an application, but my application is made up of different components, and I want those different components not to be applied at the same time. Sync waves is your friend. It's basically how to order your application deployments. So, and then there's something else called sync windows, which is basically a timed sync, meaning that I don't want you to sync until the hours of 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. or whatever. And really, that's really, you basically, sync windows is like, I only want you to sync within these windows, these window of time. So that's another way of doing your sync strategy or deployment strategy, is like, you know what, I don't want to sync my application during production hours. Let's do it off hours. That's another, essentially it's a delayed sync. It's another another way of doing it. There is 2 great questions that came up there.
Okay.
While you still have a little bit of room right there in your head.
Yeah.
So exposing Argo CD ingress and TLS termination, right? So the Argo CD UI by default has its own SSL certificate, and so everything is also a TLS. I do pass through TLS, meaning that like I just have the ingress pass through the connection that's coming in back to Argo CD, and Argo CD does the encryption. You can also do re-encrypt, right? Re-encrypt is also another way. That's a way I know that OpenShift does it. When you install Argo CD on OpenShift, it has its own front end certificate, and it'll decrypt it and then re-encrypt it using Argo CD's certificate there. I do it with Nginx. Nginx is easy to do it with Cert Manager. This is kind of like Kubernetes, I would say 201 sort of thing, where it's just another Kubernetes application. I use Nginx and Cert Manager to encrypt everything from end to end. I wouldn't expose the UI to the internet. That's just me, because there's like really no. I mean, although it's like encrypted and it's protected with SSO and everything, there's no reason to, right? I always just put it behind a firewall, but that's just kind of what I do. My background is in operations, so anytime a developer say, "Hey, can you expose this?" I always say no. So my instinct is always say no to that. And then the other question by Mr. Leary is, what would you suggest to manage secrets? So,
or Ms. Leary.
Yeah, Mr. and Ms. Leary, Lear77E. You need to tell me how. If you're on Slack, tell me how to pronounce that. So one thing about secrets and storing, so like GitOps is like you have to store everything in Git, but then like right away you're thinking, oh man, it means to have my username and password for my database in Git. The answer is yes. And like that makes everyone nervous, right? And so there is certain tools outside of GitOps, but GitOps uses. that is used to manage that, right? One of them is sealed secrets, right? So sealed secrets, all sealed secrets does is it encrypts the secret and you store the encrypted secret in Git. So not only, first of all, your Git should be behind a firewall, but other than that, not only is it behind a firewall, you also are encrypting that secret. So it's encrypted, no one can decrypt it, and it's decrypted on runtime. So when Argo applies the sealed secret, there's a sealed secret controller that just decrypts it for you. The problem or the challenge with sealed secrets is scale. You know, once you're managing maybe half dozen clusters, that's maybe fine. But when you're scaling, doing a massive scale, now you need to manage that across a fleet of clusters, and it's like, okay, like which CA certificate belongs to which sealed secret controller? Do you manage it with one CA certificate? How do you manage rotating the secret? So like, wow, now I need to re-encrypt all my secrets with this new CA. What if you miss one? The application goes down. All kinds of, it's not impossible. It's just harder, right? There's a challenge of managing that at scale. A lot of people are using Vault. So if you haven't had one, I'm gonna just write all these episode ideas for you. If you have someone from Vault, I know the DA for Vault, Rosemary, she's fantastic.
Is it just Vault? It's not like
it's HashiCorp, so it's
HashiCorp Vault. Okay.
So it's HashiCorp Vault. So you have Vault, and Vault is a secret management system that you can integrate with Argo CD. So secret management system is what that is. It manages the encryption, the rotation, doing references inside of Git to those. So you don't have to manage secrets with GitOps. There's already a system that manages it for you. The drawback to that is that you just need to have someone that manages it for you. There's yet another system to use to manage it, but it is those are the two most popular tools. Another one is the external secret controller for Kubernetes, but the external secret controller only it interfaces it with your secret management system. So like if you're using like KMS or something on like the AWS KMS system, right? Or if you're using Vault or you're using sealed secrets, the external secret manager interfaces with whatever you have, right? So a lot of people are using that, but there's a caveat. You don't just use the external secret. Like you connect your external secret manager to something else. It's just an abstraction for you. So someone says that we're thinking of using Google Cloud Platform Secret Manager and External Secret Operator. That's 100% what people are doing. External Secret Operator, and then they just connect it to whatever they're using, right? So that's a good way to handle secrets with GitOps and Argo CD. So that's it's a good way of doing it because it's just like a generic way of doing it. So you bring your own secret management system and let the external secret operator manage it for you.
And it sounds like it kind of decouples the operating system from it. So if you want to change later, it sounds easier.
Yeah, it sounds easier, right? Like whatever backend you want to, you can have multiple backends, right? So for a lot of people, and I pray for those people, but they have a lot of tech debt, and they may have 3 or 4 systems they need to interact with. The external secret operator is perfect for that because it just decouples that management for you. So so there's that. So here, that is in a nutshell how I wanted to describe Argo CD. So there's
excellent.
There's a couple points I want to point out that people brought up. So Argo CD focuses directly on CD, right? So there's people like, how do I build my image with Argo CD, or how do I do X, Y, or Z with Argo CD? And it's like, well, you don't. Argo CD isn't. Argo CD is just focused on CD. So if you you can integrate like your GitHub Actions, Jenkins, whatever with Argo CD, that's fine. If you're looking for what's that?
That's actually a question. I mean, it's a little bit outside of the scope of this, but in order to keep your app manifests current, which is like now the CI part of the system, I understand.
Yeah.
What are so these Jenkins is one of the tools you just recommend, like GitHub Actions are two
Yeah.
tools you recommend to do that.
Yeah. So like, if you're already using Jenkins, great,
Uh-huh.
keep using Jenkins. You're gonna keep your manifest updated with Jenkins,
Okay.
or with GitHub Actions.
Okay.
The Argo project has something called GitOps, Argo workflows.
Uh-huh.
So Argo workflows, I'll tell you right now, was not built to be a CI system.
Mm-hmm.
However, people are using it for a CI system.
Mm-hmm.
Argo Workflows internally was built as a job management system because there's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of AI/ML people use Argo Workflows, and it was built for AI/ML. But since it's
Mm-hmm.
using the DAG system, the data acrylic graph,
Mm-hmm.
basically making dependencies between jobs, people are using it for CI. If you want to stay within the Argo ecosystem, Argo Workflows, people are using it for CI. There is Argo rollouts for progressive delivery, right? So now you're talking about progressive application delivery like Istio or Contour. What was the other one? Not Contour.
Courier?
Someone give me it's with a C, I think.
Progressive delivery. What
yeah,
is progressive delivery? Is that like
so
a
like
canary deployment?
Yeah, so like a canary deployment or a blue-green deployment.
Okay, Knative does that.
Yeah, so Argo CD doesn't do that directly, right? So
Okay.
so you can you have to use another tool for progressive delivery. Argo's rollouts does progressive delivery. It's something I've been working on lately. It's something I'm really really falling in love with, because it's like, oh man, this, like, the canary deployments are so much more difficult without rollouts than with rollouts. And what's great about Argo rollouts is that it uses a plugin system. So like if you have Nginx, you can use that. If you have Istio, you can use that. Envoy is one. You can use Envoy. You can use the one by HashiCorp. I forget what it's called. But there's different, and then different ingresses or service meshes that you can interface with Argo rollouts to do the progressive delivery for you. So there's that. There's Argo events, which is an event bus, just a generic event bus between how to do eventing between systems, right? So like as soon as an Argo CD sync happens, you can trigger a bunch of other events. Like we mentioned before, like a Slack message, but you can also trigger another CI job. You can trigger a messaging. You can write a file. You can do whatever, right? So Argo events, generic event bus, if you kind of want to like bulk up your CD system. And then finally, there's Argo notifications if you just want to send notifications about email, if something goes down or something like that. So you have Argo CD for your CD aspect, right? Like you wrote down, I'm pointing now my screen, the CD, continuous delivery, continuous deployment. But if you're looking for an ecosystem, right? Like if you can use the Argo project, and the Argo project is a suite of DevOps tools that you can. What's important is that you can use them standalone or with other other Argo project tool sets. And it gives a whole suite of it. So if you guys are looking for, anyone out there, listening or watching, it's like, okay, well, how do I integrate Argo with XYZ? You can, or if you're looking for something cool, more cloud native, definitely check out the Argo project as well. So
will you list them for me one more time? CD,
yeah, so there's Argo CD, there's workflows.
Okay.
There's rollouts. There's events. And then there's notifications. Yeah. Right. David said Argo events is amazing. Really cool projects in this space. Yeah, Argo events. I played with today we're talking about CD. But Argo events I did in my stream. I did an episode of Argo events. It was great. Event busing is something that's kind of out of my purview, but then I can definitely see how it's useful here. So
one thing this board is missing that I would like to add before we end the show is a really good definition of what Argo CD is, like a one sentence
Oh,
What
man.
is?
What is Argo? It's an existential
Yeah.
question. Like, what isn't Argo CD? So what is Argo CD? How would we define it? So maybe I can get help from the um so I would say Argo CD is a declarative.
Mm-hmm.
Argo CD is a declarative GitOps continuous delivery tool for Kubernetes.
CD is a declarative,
Declarative. So that's very important.
comma, GitOps,
Yeah, continuous delivery tool.
declarative, GitOps, continuous delivery tool. So, okay, not a continuous deployment, continuous.
Well, both, right? GitOps CD tool, because it does both. Continuous. I would maybe put a slash. Continuous delivery slash deployment tool.
Uh-huh.
For
Kubernetes.
For Kubernetes, yes. So a lot of people ask, can I do X, Y, Z with Argo CD? Like, can I, deploy, Kubernetes cluster with Argo CD? The answer is no, right? Like, that's not what it's built for. It's like you would need to do, which is why it says for Kubernetes. You need to do something like crossplane. You say you had an episode about crossplane. Crossplane does something.
Yeah.
It's fantastic in there. A lot of people use Terraform. And a lot of people use Ansible.
So now we're getting into the infrastructure as code space. Do you consider this what's its application as code, not infrastructure as code?
Yeah. So that is a very good question. Yeah. I wouldn't. It involves infrastructure as code, but I don't think I would categorize it as such, right? I would call it applications as code.
Nice.
So that's essentially application as code because it has a lot to do with everything. So
wait, you heard it here first. We just made up a new tech term. Application as code.
Yeah, really, it's applications as code is what it is.
So we have some talk here about FSA. What's the Flux subsystem for Argo? Should I put this in the Argo project list?
No, this is the Flux.
Different.
So Flux, the Flux project has something called the Flux subsystem for Argo, which is meant to be like kind of like a helper tool. Like if you're using, so hopefully Chris Short's watching. Chris Short and I hear a lot that people are using both tools, Flux and Argo CD, because Flux is really originally. So it's like, they have, there's like a Venn diagram. They have a lot in common, but where they started is completely different, right? So like, whereas Argo CD was built to make Kubernetes easier for developers, Flux was built by SREs to make management of Kubernetes easier. And so, and so like, there's like a Venn, they have a lot in common, but there's like, there's actually people using both. But what the Flux subsystem for Argo, I think one of its strengths is how it handles Helm charts. Because Flux handles Helm directly with the Helm Golang library, and Argo just does a Helm template. So and this kind of save this for your Helm. There's a difference between running.
I do have a Flux episode scheduled for next.
Oh, okay, cool,
so,
awesome. Yeah, so it and that's really the Argo. For those that are heavily in Helm, just keep in mind that Argo renders your Helm template. It doesn't use Helm directly. So just kind of, that's kind of the thing. And that's kind of something what the Flux subsystem for Argo, if you want to use Helm and you want to keep Helm, like if you want to do Helm. So really the technical explanation is if you want to do Helm LS and you want to see that, you have to use Flux subsystem for Argo, because Argo, if you do a Helm LS on a Argo system that has Helm charts installed, you won't see anything. Because it wants to work with raw YAML. Again, it's a glorified kubectl, and so it wants to use raw YAML as much as possible. So, but yeah, that's kind of like the high level introduction. You wrote more than I thought you would. I thought when I was kind of planning for the show, I'm like, oh, hopefully I have enough to say, because But then like now you have the whole whiteboard filled
I
out.
made
So
it
now-
myself in my just
Yeah,
have my little
so-
box in my head.
so now I feel better. I feel better about myself.
Good. I think it was a stellar session. This is riveting. We have a funny comment from Kiel Schneebel, totally on brand. Application as code. I thought that's what we were doing as developers.
Yeah, yes, exactly. We're doing
Touche.
code as code, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway,
Awesome,
this has
awesome.
been an absolute pleasure. Let's give if anyone has any last minute questions, now's the time. But I think this has been a wrap. Let's remind everyone you have 2 conferences coming up.
Yep.
The
ArgoCon.
ArgoCon
and GitOpsCon.
and GitOpsCon. Yes.
So ArgoCon's is September, and then GitOpsCon is co-located with KubeCon. So I will be at both. So if you want to, if you're there in person, feel free to come up, say hi. I love talking to people. So especially in 3D, I like talking to people in 3D. So don't be shy. Also, I have a book out. So selfishly, please download that book, and find me on Twitter or the CNCF Slack. Yeah.
And next week we have an episode on cloud native build packs next Thursday that I'm pretty excited about. I'll put our Twitter handles back up.
There you go. Follow me. There you go. Right there.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. I appreciate you sharing your time. Oh, we got a question. That's what happens. It never fails when I give up is when the question.
Yes,
Zachy's asked, is there a Bootstrap example repo to the Argo Vault, etc. to play with? I love that.
Yeah. So the Bootstrap example is in the Argo CD documentation. I don't think there's one with Vault. If you put my Twitter up again, that's also my GitHub handle. I do have an example of doing a bootstrapping with sealed secrets, but not with Vault. I will also, again, recommend looking at Argo CD Autopilot that does a lot of the bootstrapping for you. So yeah, there you go. That's my GitHub handle as well. So find me on GitHub. I have a lot of example repos there. If you need an explanation, just tweet me. Get me on the CNCF Slack. I have a lot of examples up there. And then someone says the book name is Path to GitOps. Again, Path to GitOps. Just Google that. It's in the Red Hat developers website. So that's how you know.
All right.
All right.
Thanks so much, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your Thursday.
Awesome.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining.